Welcome to the session, Maximize the Performance and Value of Your Acquisition in the Project-Centric Services Space with SAP. This session will dive into three topics, scaling with people, differentiating operations, and cash flow. My name is Gregory Lefebvre. I have over 19 years of experience in performance management, value creation as an SAP architect, and now I am part of the SAP Mid-Market Strategic Innovations team for North America. We focus on creating and nurturing new routes to market, such as private equity, selection, and advisory firms. To force multiply our go-to-market, we collaborate with our partners to effectively provide SAP solutions, our mid-market customers. Keep in mind that 80% of our North America customers are, in fact, in the mid-market. Recapping for 2020, customers that chose to run SAP, 1 in 3 were either private equity, growth equity, or venture-backed. And through our partnership with ACG, we developed the SAP M&A Ambassador Program, which is the foundation of our conversation on how professional services firms are changing to meet demands in a fast-paced, consolidating M&A environment. With us today, we have Larry Perlov, President and Managing Partner at Illumiti. Larry?
Thank you, Greg. Pleasure to be here. I am, as Greg mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how SAP can help professional services companies that focus on project-centric services maximize their value through the use of SAP and related process improvements. I'll be giving you a brief introduction about Illumiti and about myself. I'll talk about the framework that I like to use to explain the principles of how ERP can add value, and specifically to focus on the 3 pillars or the 3 leverage points that professional services companies face in terms of maximizing their value for their shareholders as well as for their customers. So as an introduction, a little bit about Illumiti. We look at ourselves as welcoming our customers and our stakeholders to what's possible. As a modern system integrator and management consulting firm, we focus on helping customers transform their business in order to achieve very specific outcomes. So the premise of how we run our company is about outcome centricity, and our objective is to make our customers smarter, faster, and leaner by ourselves being smarter, faster, and leaner. And I hope that the messaging that you'll hear from us today in terms of how we approach this particular industry is going to give you some ideas on how it can be applied in the field. Illumiti is almost 21 years old. We have over 200 customers, and we serve them with over 400 consultants. We have pivoted to S4 about 6 years ago, and we've got several dozen implementations on S4HANA. We consider ourselves a mid-market player, roughly $95 million in revenue in 2020, and we have a global presence, and we deal with not only local customers, but customers who have global footprints as well. I personally have the privilege of being the president and managing partner of the firm. I'm responsible for all our delivery activities globally. I've been doing this for over a quarter of a decade. And besides serving many professional services companies as an operator in a consulting firm and leading a consulting firm, many of these principles are principles that we live internally ourselves. So the elements of this presentation are going to be focused on 3, and 8. The first 3 are the constructs and benefits of ERPs generically. The second 3 represents the leverage points that project-based professional services firms face. And the 8 represents the 8 core solution elements that can be used to address many of the challenges and opportunities that professional services firms face within this entire construct. So let's begin. First of all, the first benefit of a modern ERP is vertical and horizontal transparency. And what I mean by that is that the organization has the ability to see the information and all of the elements that are captured in the system, both vertically and horizontally throughout the enterprise in real time. In other words, somebody in a different location, in a different geography, in a different department does something, and if it's relevant to you as an operator, you have access to this information for your own purposes. The second core benefit of ERP is automation, specifically the automation of workflows and manual tasks. The third benefit of ERP is the user experience, specifically around adoption, specifically around leveraging the maximum amount of value out of ERP. So to summarize, the elements of ERP that maximize value for any company, for that matter, not just professional services firms, are transparency, automation, and user experience. And what you'll see is that those three elements are intermingled throughout the various solution components that I will discuss today.
So, Larry, what do you mean by modern ERP and new UX? How has that changed?
Well, I guess ERP has been a construct for several decades, as we all know. And in its own right, ERP has been transforming itself. When I talk about modern ERP, I'm talking about not the ERP of the 1990s, not the ERP of the early 2000s, but the ERP of the 2020s and beyond. So specifically cloud-based ERP that is extremely focused on analytics, on decision-making, on machine learning and AI. And the other piece of it is the user experience has always taken a back seat over the last few decades. It was always about the engine and not so much about the driver. And the modern ERP is actually turned it upside down. It's about the user, it's about the user experience, it's about the customer experience. And at the end of the day, I think that all the operators in the field, like ourselves, as well as SAP themselves, and I guess even SAP's competitors, have realized that at the end of the day, it's about the user. If the user doesn't have a positive experience or an interface that is friendly, they're not going to use the tool. And they will always revert back to spreadsheets or other legacy elements that enable them to run the business. So the summary, Greg, is modern ERP in the context of the cloud, in the context of the latest technologies, and the user experience is absolutely critical, especially for mobile devices. And the things that people are accustomed to from their technology is fulfilling that promise as well. Okay, so the challenges and opportunities in professional services really lean on three major leverage points. Number one, scaling with people. In other words, as the organization scales, unlike a product-based company, we all know that services companies can only scale by hiring more people. And how do you do that? How do you do that in a way that maintains your quality, maintains your consistency, and doesn't inflate your back office? Number two is, how do you differentiate yourself in your operations? And number three, how do you protect your working capital and your cash? Starting with people, we know that professional services firm leaders always challenge themselves with making sure that they have the right people with the right skills, working on the right projects at the right time. And the elements that they have to work with is they have to be able to recruit, they have to be able to staff, and they have to be able to clear the bench as efficiently as possible. The challenge is all three of these have got delays and have got dependencies on each other. So fundamentally, in terms of recruiting, we need to have a clear view on what's current and what's upcoming in terms of demand and in terms of supply. And then it takes a huge amount of time to find the right person for the job. The second piece is that once we have hired the people, we now have utilization pressure. We need to be able to get people as billable or working on productive tasks as soon as possible. And then finally, those who are not staffed not only create burden on the company financially, but also have a morale problem. Because if consultants or resources are sitting on the bench or are not being utilized, there is a higher propensity that they will leave. And turnover is, of course, something that needs to be avoided. So professional services firms then look at fundamentally two streams of activities to achieve the right people with the right skills at the right time. First of all, there is always a forecasting protocol, both for supply as well as for demand. So on the supply side, we're looking at deals that have been closed or about to close. On the demand side, we're looking at people that are going to be rolling off current engagements. And then based upon the gaps that are created, recruitment teams have to go out and find adequate staff to fulfill the upcoming demand. The challenges, of course, is deciding, do I hire someone permanently? Do I hire them as a contractor? Do I go to a partner? And then, of course, once I've identified the team, I need to go and staff them on projects. Once I have the team, besides keeping them busy on projects, I have to retain them. And in order to retain them and to stay ahead of the curve, I, as a leader of a professional services firm, have to put together a development plan. I have to train and coach these individuals, and I have to provide them with feedback. So the challenges then that are faced by the leaders are, first of all, matching the right people with the right skills to the right assignments. Secondly, having clear visibility on what's coming. And thirdly, filling these hard to find seats with the appropriate resources. Oftentimes, the hard resources are the ones that you need, and those are also the ones that are almost impossible to identify in the market, attract, recruit, and retain. So I'm going to present you now with 3 elements of an SAP solution that can help address that. Number 1, we have the resource management platform that enables us to capture everything that there is to know about every single individual who works within the organization. And this includes subcontractors as well. So we have a full dossier on every individual, and when they're placed on projects, when they're rolling off, when they will become available, what their projected utilization is. We have all this information about the individual. So that enables us to match the right person with the right assignment. Secondly, in terms of visibility, it's having a very robust and sophisticated analytics engine that enables us to see KPIs, to see dashboards, to present them on mobile devices so that it's at our fingertips to make better decisions in real time. And then in terms of filling hard to find individual roles, we have a very robust recruiting engine and a personnel development engine that enables us to not only identify the individual, manage them through the hiring process, but also put together a performance management plan, a development plan, and lead them through the life cycle within the company to ensure not only that they grow within the company, but also that we retain them and don't lose them to the competition.
Larry, if you don't mind, if we could go back 1 slide.
Sure.
When you talk about these different solutions, how do they integrate with the underlying, modern ERP?
Can you be a little more specific, Greg?
When you talk about the analytics, when you talk about the performance and talent management, are those separate solutions? And then how do they integrate under the SAP umbrella with the ERP solution?
Excellent. Great question. So all of those elements are inherent parts of the engine of SAP. Some of them reside within, say, the SuccessFactors umbrella, which is part of SAP, and some of them reside within the S4 umbrella. But the beauty is it's all integrated, and the analytics engine is what ties it all together. So we're able to provide information about people, whether it's within the SuccessFactors clouds platform or whether it's within S4, whether it's S4 on-prem or in the cloud, we're able to connect all of those pieces together. So when we're thinking about all of those pieces, and in fact, all the pieces I will be discussing today, they're all inherently embedded within SAP. And especially with the way SAP is going to market now, all of those pieces are essentially available to the customer as one big bundle. So you don't have to sit and pick and select carefully and potentially make the mistake of leaving something behind. All of those pieces are available to you and are ready to be deployed to capitalize on these capabilities. Okay, so the next set of challenges when it comes to people is the back office scalability challenges. So specifically, we've got just the manual back office stuff, the paperwork, the handling of timesheets, of expense reports, of status reports, of documentation and updates. All of this stuff creates a huge amount of churn, and it requires a lot of hands to touch objects. The second element here is the handoffs themselves. So if I have a resource in the field working for the customer, they submit a timesheet to a back office administrator who reviews it, enters it into the system, goes to the project manager for approval. The project manager touches it, looks at it, says, no, this is wrong, sends it back to the consultant. The consultant has to update it. And so each time there is a handoff, it creates delays. And what's worse, it creates the opportunity for mistakes. The mistakes is the most devastating part of this whole process, because as the volume increases and as the organization scales, it creates more and more opportunities for issues, and those mistakes grow exponentially. So the way we propose to address it is with three core elements of ERP. Number one is automation. And especially with the recent developments and the readiness of technologies such as robotic process automation or machine learning, we're able to automate so many things. We're able to identify situations where something that requires 3 or 4 steps, it just gets automated and is done in the background. Those same technologies, especially machine learning, can also help with the second element here, which is management by exception. In other words, people and managers and operators don't have to touch every single transaction and every single object. Instead, they only have to identify those elements that are outside of the acceptable parameters or the acceptable tolerances. So for argument's sake, if you're submitting a timesheet and you're expected to submit 40 hours a week and you submit 41 or 39, if it's within the tolerance, the system can accept it automatically. It doesn't require somebody to manually sit and click it on accept. Obviously, this is a function of what is the policy and protocol within each company. But the beauty of that is it eliminates the need for touching every transaction, but only touching those that require specific attention. And then the third element here is self-service. Put the technology, put the tool in the hands of the person who can make the decision, who can enter the information. So just enter your timesheet directly into the system. If you're in the field and you're performing maintenance on a piece of equipment, let me present you with the drawings, let me present you with the instructions, and let you confirm automatically that you've completed the task, and it doesn't have to go to an intermediary or an administrator to do it for you. And by doing that, the organization can scale, the organization can grow, and the back office doesn't have to grow with it. Okay, the second piece is differentiating operations. So many of the elements I just spoke about are in many ways differentiating, because it not only improves the scalability and the seamlessness of running a people business, but it also creates differentiation. But regardless, when we talk about differentiation, there are 3 key differentiators to any company. And those are, of course, quality, service, and price. If you can lead in at least one and maintain parity with the other 2, you're likely to be able to generate more volume and sales than your competitors. And the area I want to focus on today isn't quality or price, because those are not inherently, especially in the services business, those are not inherently impacted by ERP or technology. But service is. And within service, there are 3 subcomponents of differentiation. The first one is reliability. In other words, do what you say. The second one is speed and flexibility. In other words, how short is your lead time and how flexible are you? And the third is just the availability. If I need you to do something, can you do it? Are you available? Do you have the right resources available? And all of those pieces together create the perception of service and trust that professional services companies need to be able to portray. And the elements that enable us to do this with SAP are a robust forecasting engine that taps into our analytics engine, as well as into the integrated nature of SAP and the ability to pull the data from all the various sources and present them into a cohesive, clear, easy-to-use dashboard. The second piece is, again, the management by exception. So identifying the issues as they arise. If something is out of tolerance, I can respond and I can be all over it. And the third is having the right people. And again, I'm touching on the capability to track and manage the resources and having a very, very robust database of our people, which includes not only who they are, but also what they can do and what they've got experience with. And by doing those three things, it enables us to address these elements of reliability by having the appropriate forecast, speed and flexibility, dealing with exceptions and eliminating delays, and the availability, making sure we've got the right people to be deployed as the customer requirements change. From a cash flow perspective, because this is a people business, the elements that are of concern to leaders of professional services firms are dealing with the fixed costs, especially as the business scales, dealing with the cash-to-cash cycle, and then dealing with the bench. Because labor or the cost of human capital is by far the highest expense in a professional service firm, a heavy bench means that the company is potentially losing money. So how does our SAP solution help us address that? First of all, with respect to the fixed cost piece, it's all about scalability. So those are the three elements I just spoke about. It's the automation, it's the management by exception, and self-service. When you put those in the hands of growing professional services firms, it eliminates a lot of potential issues and creates the ability to scale. We had a customer several years ago where they had thousands of mobile global resources working all over the world, and they had a relatively small staff in the back office, and they were afraid of scaling because every time they would hire more people, they would need to hire more people in the back office as well. And by implementing SAP for them, we implemented it in 5 months. We were able to enable them to triple the size of their business without hiring a single individual in the back office, by simply giving them more automation, more management by exception, and better self-service capabilities. With respect to the cash-to-cash cycle, it's all about integration. Because SAP is fully integrated, the ability to have concepts like pay when paid. So in other words, if a customer isn't paying, we are able to potentially hold on to cash and not pay suppliers, because it could be a supplier issue or a supplier quality problem that is causing the customer not to pay. It enables us to create controls like that. And this integration and this full visibility end-to-end enables us to optimize that cash-to-cash cycle and identify the areas where cash is stuck. And then finally, from a management of the bench perspective, it's all about the utilization dashboards. So again, it's our forecast, it's our KPI dashboards, and it's the full visibility on our people, who is available, who's got the right skills, so we don't make a staffing mistake and keep someone on the bench unnecessarily. So, to summarize, these 8 elements that I've covered repeatedly, the forecasting piece, the deep integration, management by exception, robust resource management, automation, KPIs and dashboards, recruiting and personnel development, and self-service and mobility are the core elements that enable SAP to be a leading solution for professional services firms. And those who are effectively embracing them are able to become smarter, faster, and leaner. So they're able to make better decisions. They're able to respond faster and be able to do it with less back office staff. They're able to be flexible. Localization is an important topic that I didn't really cover, but especially in the global context, when we have offices around the world, the ability to roll out a standard solution and automatically be localized because the localization already exists out of the box with SAP is extremely useful and creates a lot of velocity. The transparency that everybody can see what they need to see, when they need to see it, in order to make better, timely decisions, and ultimately have better governance and compliance. So have the appropriate controls, have the appropriate tolerances, so those management by exception elements are able to be elevated and escalated as needed, and ultimately the business runs smoother, the business runs faster, and the business runs leaner. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. This was, very insightful. I have one last question before we close this topic. You mentioned, the offering from Illumiti in partnering with SAP helps really a lot of these services firms scale. Have you seen a lot of consolidation or M&A activity in the professional services environment? And have you seen more traction, resulting in more work for Illumiti?
Well, we've definitely seen an increase in activity in the professional services space, whether it's project-based consulting companies, engineering and construction, or just straight general consulting. And many of those companies grow by acquisition. So oftentimes it will be a company that will buy SAP, and they will hire Illumiti, and we will help them implement it, and we will implement a template and a standard solution. And then that company is with their strategy of growth by acquisition will require to integrate the acquired company into their template. And the beauty of SAP is that it is so centric on best practices and standard solutions that, especially when customers do implement it that way, it is relatively straightforward to integrate the acquired company into the global platform. So the short answer is yes, Greg. We have seen an increase in activity, and there is definitely an increased interest in leveraging SAP so that professional services companies can grow both organically through some of the principles I've shared today, but also by acquisition, and especially if there is international acquisitions, that they're leveraging the capabilities of the localization as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Larry, for your time presenting today. Thank you to the audience as well for your attention. 2 quick reminders. Illumiti will be hosting a network session following the event's close. So you can also chat with some of the Illumiti staff and some of the other M&A Ambassador Program partners. And then next, our keynote with HGGC, Driving Returns in Any Conditions. You can hear how Steve Young and Rich Lawson create value today.